After discovering that my father-in-law had $450 million in his account and was preparing to draft a will, my terrible husband immediately turned on me, throwing divorce papers in my face and kicking me out of the house. However, the next day, he called me in a state of panic. His voice trembled as he learned the truth about the $450 million. This is my true story, and I hope you'll listen to the whole story to understand and sympathize with the pain I have endured. It would mean the world to me if you left encouraging words in the comments below this video. My name is Anna. I am 45 years old and I work in business. My husband, Mark, who is also 45, used to be a salesperson, but is now at home taking on the role of a homemaker. There's a long story behind him becoming the keeper of the family hearth, but to explain it, I need to go back and tell you about my first husband. This is my second marriage. My first husband passed away in a workplace accident 5 years ago, leaving me with the grief of a widow. Thanks to life insurance and compensation, I received around $200 a million. I married him when I was 33, and we didn't have children. I inherited this money from my late husband's family, but his parents, who were already 82 and didn't have much time left, said they didn't need it. So, I decided to give it to my husband's younger brother. However, he also declined, saying that it was his brother's money and he had a stable job, so he didn't need it either. Eventually, after paying significant inheritance taxes, most of the money remained with me. Combined with my savings and stable job, I became fairly well off by turning 41. But despite having all of that, sitting alone in the house and looking at the money in my bank account, I felt empty. Coming home from work, no one awaited me, and that would never change. The bed beside me was still neatly made, as if waiting for someone to return. The worst part was when I accidentally prepared breakfast for two. As I bit into the second piece of toast, I suddenly realized the emptiness in my heart. I truly wanted to take a break, but I knew I had to keep working. So, I returned to the office with an ever-present feeling of emptiness inside. I longed for someone, anyone, to listen to me. And a miracle happened when that person turned out to be my current husband. I confided in him about the loss of my late husband and the reason I needed time to recover. At that time, Mark came into my life as a wonderful gift. He cared for me with tenderness, always listening and understanding the pain I had endured. During long evenings, when I could only sit alone in an empty room, he would come by my side, sharing stories and making me feel less alone. When I opened up about the emptiness in my soul, Mark expressed his desire to have children with me. This touched my heart, and I felt a new hope arise. Every time he spoke of his dream of having a small family, I imagined a bright, warm future. I began to think that Mark was the gift fate had given me during my darkest moments. His presence not only soothed the sadness in my heart, but also ignited hope for a new life, where I could find love and happiness once again. The things I had thought I would never have again were now within reach, thanks to the genuine affection Mark gave me. At this time, I had regained my spirit and felt my life beginning to shine brighter. My work was going smoothly, with small successes boosting my confidence day by day. Mark, my current partner, treated me like a queen. He was always by my side, supporting and encouraging me in every aspect of life. This period truly felt like a beautiful chapter in my life. I often looked at the peaceful moments I shared with Mark, when we laughed together, sharing small but precious things. Cozy dinners, deep conversations, and quiet moments spent together made me realize the happiness I had missed for so long. My friends and colleagues admired my life, often wishing for the love and care that I was fortunate to have. They frequently mentioned that I radiated a newfound vitality, a radiant joy they had never seen in me before. I knew that Mark's support and love had brought me the good things I deserved. With him by my side, I felt that I was not just a woman, but a better version of myself. Strong, confident, and filled with hope for the future. Not long after, Mark proposed to me. One romantic evening on our vacation became the most wonderful moment of my life. Standing on a small, beautiful island with the sunset sparkling on the water like a perfect painting. In that romantic atmosphere, Mark knelt, his eyes filled with love and sincerity. He proposed to me with a sparkling ring, and his warm, meaningful words echoed in the quiet air. I felt my heart race and my emotions surged, making it impossible to hold back my happiness. "I want to walk this path with you for the rest of my life," he said, as I looked into his eyes, unable to believe that I had found such a beautiful love. I agreed, and in that moment, it felt like the world stopped, leaving just the two of us, two souls united in a shared dream. It felt as if I had found not only a life partner, but also a soulmate who would accompany me on every path ahead. That day was not just a promise to marry, but also the beginning of a new chapter filled with love and hope in my life. After that wonderful vacation, Mark told me he wanted to take me to meet his father. A sense of nervousness and worry filled my mind, but there was also a hint of excitement. His mother had passed away a long time ago, and he was an only child, so introducing me to his father was deeply significant. Mark shared that his father was very important to him, and meeting me would be a big step forward in our relationship. "Dad really admires strong and independent women," he said, his eyes full of pride when mentioning his father. "You'll make him proud." I felt encouraged, but also a bit pressured. I wanted to make a good impression on Mark's father, and I knew that this meeting would shape our relationship in some way for the future. As I stepped into Mark's house, I felt a bit overwhelmed. Everything seemed familiar and warm, but when I saw his father lying on the bed, my heart sank. Although he couldn't walk and was confined to his bed, his eyes still shone brightly, full of clarity and wisdom. Mark introduced me to his father, and I could sense the love in his gaze as he looked at him. Mark's father smiled kindly at me and asked about my business. I was surprised to realize that he was not only interested, but also knowledgeable about this field. "Could you share more about the projects you're working on?" he asked, his voice filled with curiosity and enthusiasm. I couldn't help but be amazed at how sharp he was, and his questions made me feel as if I were talking with a colleague rather than just a parent. I began telling him about the challenges at work, the projects I had undertaken, and the dreams I was pursuing. He listened intently, occasionally nodding in agreement, and when I finished, he shared his insights in a thoughtful manner that made me feel both intrigued and admiring. That moment was truly special. Despite his difficult circumstances, he was able to create an atmosphere full of energy and support. I felt genuinely welcomed and embraced in this family. It was a beautiful start to my relationship with Mark and his family. One evening, as we were having dinner, Mark looked at me seriously. "Anna, there's something I want to tell you," he began. "Of course I'm listening," I replied, feeling a little nervous. "I think I will stay at home and take care of things while you continue with your career." Mark said, his tone decisive. I paused for a moment, unable to believe what I had just heard. What? Why would you want to do that? Don't you think this might affect us? I felt a knot form in my chest. No, I don't think so. You're the one with the more stable career, and I can take care of Dad, the house, cook, and support you. Mark explained, his expression sincere. But I don't want you to sacrifice your dreams just to stay at home. You could find another job, I protested, feeling frustration rising within me. Mark furrowed his brows. I don't think it's a sacrifice. I actually feel comfortable with this. You can focus on your career, and I'll take care of everything else. After a while of debating, I began to feel a little more at ease. I knew he was sincere, and the most important thing was the connection between us. Finally, I sighed and said, "All right, but we'll have to discuss how to make this work and ensure we both feel comfortable in our roles." Mark smiled, his eyes full of hope. "That's exactly it. We're a couple, right?" I nodded, and in that moment, I knew that despite the challenges ahead, we would overcome every obstacle together. This new life would require adjustments, but I trusted that we could do it together. Time passed, and soon the storm began to hit me. Things didn't seem to go as I had expected. Instead of taking care of the house or worrying about his father's health, Mark gradually revealed himself to be lazy, spending all his time on his own interests. I often came home after a long, tiring day at work, hoping to find him busy cooking or cleaning. But the truth was, the house was still messy, the dishes piled up in the sink, and Mark was sitting there, glued to the TV screen or playing games. One day, I discovered something that left me stunned. When I checked my bank account, I saw that my savings had significantly decreased. My heart sank as I realized that Mark had withdrawn money to spend on his personal hobbies. The latest games trips out with friends that I knew nothing about, everything was draining the money I had saved for our future. "Mark, we need to talk," I said, my tone firm, but my heart full of worry. "What's going on, Anna?" he asked, not taking his eyes off the screen. "I found out you've withdrawn a large sum from our savings account. What are you doing with that money?" I asked, my gaze steady on him. Mark turned to me, a somewhat surprised expression on his face. "Oh, it's just some games. You don't need to worry about that." "Games? This is not just a game, Mark. This is the money I worked hard to earn. You can't just spend it recklessly like this," I said, feeling frustrated. "You're overreacting. I just want to enjoy life a little," Mark replied, not understanding the serious problem he was causing. "But you're not doing anything. You're staying at home, not taking care of your dad, not doing any housework, and you're spending my money. This is so unfair." I could feel my anger rising, and I couldn't hold back anymore. "What? Do you think I should go back to work? You can't tell me how to live my life," Mark shot back. The argument grew more heated, and I realized that the man I once loved was turning into someone I couldn't recognize. I began to wonder if marrying him was the biggest mistake of my life. The dreams of a beautiful future had now turned into a burden of anxiety, and I felt trapped in a marriage that I couldn't control. We decided to put the thing behind us and simply start over from the start. She added, "It got worse. In the following days, he started seeing other women. He had an affair and shamelessly brought his mistress home while I was at work, bringing her into the very place where we had shared sweet moments. Every time I came home, it felt like a knife to the heart. The sight of other women laughing with him was unbearable. The intimate moments I had once thought were only ours now became a cruel joke. We began living separately, each in our own room, creating a distance that had never existed before. There were no more cozy evenings together, no more intimate conversations like before. The double bed was now just a painful reminder of the happy memories we had shared every night. Lying on the bed that I once thought would be the warm place of love, I think about the image of Mark performing repulsive actions with someone else. I'd lie there, my heart shattered by the painful memories. The truth is, I have been ruthlessly betrayed, and the trust I placed in Mark is now nothing but a deep wound that can never heal. I wonder if there's any chance for me to find myself again, or if I'll forever live in the shadow of a love that's died. Then, I discovered a heartbreaking truth. Mark came to me only because I had a large sum of money from the workers' compensation after my late husband's accident. He wanted a comfortable life without having to work. One day, I overheard him talking to his mistress on the phone, and what I heard confirmed all my suspicions. The feeling of betrayal and exploitation caused me unbearable pain. Not only that, but Mark was also ruthless in his treatment of his own father, abandoning him when he needed care and support. I have witnessed many times how he was not only indifferent, but also cruel with his words, as if his father didn't deserve any respect. There were moments when Mark showed irrational anger, making me shudder at the thought of the emotional pain his sick father must have felt while lying in his hospital bed. His actions and words made me wonder if he secretly wished for his father's death to come sooner. This coldness and heartlessness not only disappointed me, but also made me question the character of the person I once loved. I could no longer live in such a painful and cruel environment. My day feels endless, starting early in the morning with the worries about my father-in-law. I try to take care of him, ensuring he has enough medicine and food before I leave for work. The office work is always busy, but I still have to quietly keep my mind sharp amidst the pressure. When I return home in the evening, I continue with household chores, tidying up the house, and preparing meals. Each day passes like this, while my husband comfortably travels with his mistress, living a life I'd never thought I would have to endure. The disparity between responsibility and enjoyment in our lives feels like a slap in the face, making me feel more lonely and exhausted than ever. One day, while I was cleaning the living room, my father-in-law called me over. He was sitting on the bed, his gaze distant, as though lost in deep thought. Then, he spoke about his savings of $450 million. His voice was deep, carrying a profound sadness and disappointment. "My dear, I truly feel sorry for you," he began, slowly opening up about what he had witnessed. "I'm not only disappointed in my son, but I also worry about you. He's not just lazy, he's immoral. Like a failure in my life." My father-in-law sighed, his eyes filled with sorrow as he began to tell the story of his past. "When your mother-in-law passed away when Mark was very young, I didn't know what to do. I was left with only my son and a huge void in my heart. I pampered him, trying to make up for the shortcomings he had to endure. I thought that if I gave him everything he needed, he would grow up happy." He paused, slowly shaking his head, the disappointment clearly etched on his face. "But perhaps I was wrong. I didn't teach him the real values of life, not just money and indulgence. I inadvertently created a lazy person, immersed in pampering. The worry in his heart was evident, as though he feared he wouldn't live long enough to see his son change. I just hope you can find happiness and peace, even though it may not come from my son. Now, you not only have to work to support him and your family, but you also have to take care of this sick old man. Don't worry, Dad. Don't think of yourself as a burden, because taking care of you is the duty of children, I gently replied. His words made me feel the pain he was enduring, a pain not only from the failure of his son, but also from the worry about my future in such a family. As time passed, the sorrow of my father-in-law gradually became an emptiness that could not be filled. When he passed away, I felt a gloom enveloping the entire house. Mark, though not showing it clearly, had a strange light in his eyes. He was certain the inheritance would be his, and that made him overjoyed. Less than a week after his father's funeral, Mark burst into my room, his face unable to hide his excitement. He looked like a child receiving a birthday gift, but his joy was not for my sorrow. "Ayana," he shouted, throwing a divorce paper in my face. "Finally, I'm free. I don't have to endure this marriage anymore." Anger and pain surged inside me. Was this how he responded to the beautiful memories we shared? I couldn't believe the man I once loved had turned into someone so selfish and greedy. As the divorce paper fell to the ground, I felt like my whole life was collapsing at that moment. Mark had not only lost a father, but he had also lost his humanity, obsessed with the money that was soon to come. As the paper fell to the floor, a tense atmosphere filled the room. Mark stood before me, his eyes full of arrogance. "Adna," he began with a smug tone, "now you see, I don't need you anymore. I'm about to inherit a huge fortune from my father. It will all be mine." "Are you kidding?" I replied, trying to stay calm, though my insides were boiling. "Money can't buy happiness or self-respect." Mark sneered. "You don't understand anything. I'm going to live the life I want, not under the shadow of a useless wife like you." "I'm not useless," I shouted, feeling anger welling up inside me. "I've put up with you and everything you've done. You've betrayed me, and now you think money will give you everything?" "I don't have to tolerate you anymore," Mark said, throwing the divorce papers at my face. "Here, sign it. I don't want to see your face again." I touched the paper, feeling its coldness. "You think getting a divorce will set you free? You'll still be a failure. Money can't replace a responsible child." As I turned away, a sense of relief began to spread in my mind, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. Mark might think he'd won, but he had no idea about the inheritance money. My heart no longer ached. Instead, there was a sense of satisfaction, knowing he'd go crazy when he found out the truth about his weak father. The next morning, as the first sunlight streamed through the window, I was deep in sleep, basking in the feeling of freedom and relief. A single life awaited me again, like a blank page waiting to be written. But my peace didn't last long. The phone rang, cutting through my thoughts. On the other end, Mark's familiar voice roared, filled with panic and anger. "Anna, what have you done with that money? Why don't I have it? What scheme have you pulled?" he yelled. I listened, feeling a small smile begin to bloom in my heart. "Mark, calm down," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady, while my heart danced with satisfaction. "Let me tell you about your father's will, your real father. He left $215 million to charity. and only 200 million to me. What? His voice interrupted, filled with rage. So I get nothing. I should have been the heir. Why did he do this? Because you don't deserve it. You've been awful, even wishing for his early death. He knew who you really are, and that's why you got nothing. You set this up, didn't you? Mark continued yelling, his tone growing more frantic. You can't do this. I won't accept it. I laughed, a sense of relief washing over me. Mark, the truth is, you created your own fate. You can't blame anyone but yourself. The call ended in his anger and frustration, leaving me with a sweet feeling. I no longer felt the pain and pressure from our awful marriage. I had officially escaped the shadows of the past, and no matter the challenges, I would continue moving forward. After that call, Mark sank into a pit of regret. He couldn't believe everything had ended like this. His arrogance had blinded him, and now he had to face the harsh reality. His father was gone. There was no inheritance, no job, no wife, and all his pride had shattered. He had to start over at 45. After all the losses, Mark faced a lonely and difficult life, with no one by his side. With no family or wealth to rely on, he had no choice but to start from scratch, struggling every day to continue living. As for me, I still hoped he could live well and learn to correct his mistakes, because after all, we were once married. Despite all the hurt, I didn't wish for him to remain in misery forever. Our story serves as a reminder to everyone: never take family for granted. Appreciate and love the people in your family, because family is unique, and once it's lost, it can never be regained.